The oil and gas industry powers the nation, but what happens when abandoned wells, often called zombie wells, are left to corrode and even rust and even leak? A joint ABC News investigation with some of our owned and operated stations that aired right here on ABC News Live exposed the danger that they can pose, and in just Texas alone, there are more than 8,000 wells left orphaned, mostly by energy companies that just dissolved. Investigative reporter Kevin Ozebek with our ABC-owned station KTRK has this incredible story.
After Tom Taylor fires up his engine and gets us a few miles offshore, we're in the heart of Trinity Bay. And we reach what can be called an oil and gas graveyard.
I mean, just look at all around us. It is just shocking, the level of abandoned infrastructure out here.
And all these pipes going into the water, they're going somewhere. Where's the other end?
Out here, there are huge rigs just rusting away and zombie wells that perfectly show how they got their nickname. Their pipes are so corroded, they're now relics, now ghosts, with their glory days of fueling the country now decades in the past.
We put something in there that actually had a lifespan. Well, life's over. You got to get it out.
Tom is a recreational boater with a deep connection to this bay. So seeing this pains him and can startle him too.
Something's smoking off of that.
Look at that.
And as Tom says, when you come out here, you never know what you're going to find. Look at this abandoned rig. Right now, it is smoking clearly. It looks like there was a fire right there.
Did it get hit by lightning?
But what is even more concerning to Tom is what you can't see, but you sure can smell it.
When you kind of get us near these, we can smell something coming off of these. Do you smell that too?
You sure? I sure do.
Many of these wells are orphaned, meaning the company that ran them is long out of business, and the responsibility to plug them now sits with the state.
This is hissing. I can hear it.
Our colleagues at ABC News also went out with Tom on Trinity Bay. 7 out of the 10 wells they tested were leaking combustible gas. They even captured gas bubbling up from one of the wells.
The only way that we know to mitigate and to stop those emissions is to plug a well. So, our focus has always been on doing just that, plugging the well.
It's the Railroad Commission of Texas, despite its name, that's tasked with overseeing orphan wells in our state. It tells 13 Investigates it knows of roughly 8,500 wells it still needs to plug.
Do you have the money to plug 8,500 orphaned wells that are on your book?
No, we do not have the money to plug 8,500 wells today from a state level or a federal level.
Based on the funding the commission does get, it has been plugging on average 1,150 orphan wells a year. Just a few years back, the state estimated it would cost well over a whopping $480 million to plug the state's orphaned wells. And that's when the Railroad Commission knew of just 7,396 of them.
Part of defending oil and gas is taking care of problems like this.
So this is a problem then?
I think it's a big problem, and we want to get it fixed.
Dawn Buckingham, who leads the Texas General Land Office, has donated $10 million from her agency's budget to the Railroad Commission to get these wells in Trinity Bay plugged faster. Every day out here, the brackish water does more damage. Pipes on these rigs are rusting right through the middle. And Tom worries that what appears to be tape holding pipes like this one together won't hold. They are the zombie wells he no longer wants haunting Trinity Bay.
How would you describe the level of corrosion on these wells?
Well, this is just complete failure here. You can go over there and just grab that pipe and probably just break it right off.
And we've got to talk more about this now. Let's bring in investigative reporter Kevin Ozebek from Houston there. Kevin, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Gio, thank you. Great to be with you today.
Absolutely. Listen, these images, just mind-blowing to see these zombie wells. So what was it like for you to be right next to them? I mean, you were just feet away.
Yeah, Gio, I have to tell you, it's surreal to be out there and to be just a few feet away from these wells. I mean, First off, the weather is perfect. We just had this like glass-like bay when we were out there. So you see all these wells dotted in the distance. And when you get close to them, it almost feels like it's lifeless out there. And Gio, you're kind of thinking that just a few decades ago, this part of the bay would have been buzzing with activity. There would have been rig workers coming and going all the time. But even though in some ways it feels lifeless, the level of corrosion on these wells is so severe, it's almost given these zombie wells character. They are almost like creature-like now. So you're out there thinking this, but then all of a sudden, Gio, the wind will shift and you'll just get this waft of this awful, awful odor. I'm talking that sulfur-like, rotting egg-like smell. That is what is coming off of some of these wells. And when you're just a few feet away from some of these wells, Gio, that odor can be overwhelming. And this is why that is so concerning. That smell kind of gives you an indication that you may be next to a zombie well that is leaking some sort of gas.
And that image of a creature-like thing is just stunning when you see that well smoking like it did when you were right next to us. This was obviously the view from Texas, but this is a project that you worked on with our ABC News investigative team and other ABC stations across the country. How big of a problem are these zombie wells across the country?
Well, it may not seem like a big problem to many Americans because it may not be in view, but get this, Gio. According to the federal government, there are 3.5 million abandoned wells all across the country in more than 25 states. Of course, Texas is a hotspot, but you will also find wells like this in New York, California, Indiana, Pennsylvania, just to name a few. And according to the Environmental Defense Fund, 14 million Americans are living within 1 mile of one of these wells. And here, this is why this could be concerning. Some of those wells, they are known polluters. They are belching out greenhouse gases like methane. Some of them have toxic gas coming out of them, especially when you look at the situation over in West Texas. We have a lot of zombie wells on ranches where, Gio, you can actually see the oil bubbling up from around them. So, of course, that creates concerns for soil contamination. In some cases, concerns for water contamination too. And I highly, highly recommend going to abcnews.com and watching the piece that your colleague Kana Whitworth filed this week with the ABC News investigative unit. They took that piece that you just saw and they zoom out and they show how this is not just a problem here in the heartland, but on the East Coast and the West Coast as well. And ABC News, working with several other ABC stations, tested 76 abandoned wells in this country. Gio, get this, 40 of them, so more than half, were found to be leaking some sort of oil or combustible gas. And we believe the months worth of reporting from stations like KTRK, other ABC stations, and ABC News, well, it all kind of culminates in one of the biggest investigations of its kind into these wells.
Well, just unbelievable, and we're so glad that you were a part of that, because as you say, we need to bring attention to this, especially because, as you pointed out in the piece, they just can't afford to fix these, and so many of these need to be fixed. All right, Kevin, thank you so much for your reporting here on ABC News Live. We appreciate you.